My routine was so mundane I could disassociate throughout it. Alarm goes off at 5 a.m. Shower, get dressed, go get coffee, go to work. However, while I was at the coffee shop, I got a strange feeling that brought me back to reality. I could feel eyes crawling over me, boring into my skin. My head snapped up, now on a swivel. What the? The other customer and the barista were both staring at me, eyes wide, a Cheshire grin on display. I quickly looked away, uncomfortably unnerved. Walking up to the counter, the barista said my name in a muffled voice. Briefly, I glanced back up at her face, shuddered, and nodded, grabbing the coffee and rushing out the door. Hurriedly, I climbed into my car, and inadvertently glanced into the car beside mine. A person, who had been facing out of the opposite window, snapped their head around, and our eyes met.
The same Cheshire grin plastered on her face, she began to smack her head against the closed window, keeping eye contact all the while. I gasped in horror as her forehead began to split and her teeth began to crack, blood spurting from both. With shaking hands, I jammed the key into the ignition, and sped away. Traffic was at a literal standstill, as people sat frozen in their cars, grinning creepily. Even pedestrians stood mid-crosswalk, as still as the grave, gaps and caps on display. Frustrated and fearful, I laid on the horn. The collective of creeps all snapped their gaze over to me. A crack of thunder boomed as the sky swiftly darkened. They weren't smiling anymore. Their faces were now as stormy as the sky above. Unanimously, but without moving their lips, their silence was broken. He is us now. We are him. Let him in, child, let him in. I then felt the corners of my mouth twitch.